What's up, guys? I never in a million years thought I would see these two on the same screen. This is crazy. Lynette Zang and a fellow named Robert Breedlove just did an interview together. Now, Robert Breedlove has a show called What Is Money Show, and he's a big time Bitcoiner for my silver stackers. My mind is blown right now, so I don't even know what to say. And I just ran across this video and I said, you know what, I'm going to react to it. Before I do that, and you know, all you guys know Lynette Zang, hardcore gold and silver lover. She loves everything we love: the country, you know, gardening, community, the pew pews, having a stash house, a garden, all that stuff, right? It's crazy, man. I skimmed through it, and Robert Breedlove and her sat down and they talked. You know what I mean? It wasn't a debate. He just had her on the show, and they discussed things. You know what I mean? I heard a little bit of it, but I was like, wow, I got to react to this. So let me introduce you to Robert Breedlove. This is a Kitco video from 2 years ago when he was on the show with Michelle McClura, I think her name is, the pretty lady, talking about Bitcoin back in May 2021. Check it out.
Robert Breedlove is the founder and CEO of crypto consulting firm Parallax Digital and a self-proclaimed philosopher in the Bitcoin space. Robert, good to have you with us here on Kitco.
Thanks, Michelle. Glad to be here.
Well, Robert, you got on my radar during my interview and conversations with personal finance guru Robert Kiyosaki, best known for his Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. And Robert told me that, of course, he buys gold and silver, but that he also buys crypto, and that you are his go-to guy when it comes to all matters crypto. So I wanted to give your insights to our viewers directly.
Now, let me give you some context. Robert Kiyosaki is my absolute one of my favorite mentors in the financial game. Napoleon Hill and stuff like that. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I don't know how many times. And when this video was made in May 2021, this is when I first got into Bitcoin, right? And so when I heard them say that he's basically Robert Kiyosaki's go-to guy, I said, wow, okay, let me check it out. That's crazy. And plus, Michelle ain't too bad to look at. But anyways, let's see what he's got to say.
Bitcoin itself is not a network that is going to conform to any jurisdictional law whatsoever. And that's what makes it so important, frankly, is that it's the one monetary network we've ever had in history that does not respond to coercion or force. So try as they might, I'm sure the U.S. government, in all its wisdom, will gradually adapt to the Bitcoin network, find a way to monitor and tax the transactions as best that they can. But in the long run, as we can get more deeply into, I see Bitcoin as fundamentally disruptive to gold, and government and central banking itself is an apparatus built on top of gold. So I do think that this wave of innovation is massive, and it's something that it's very difficult for us to even comprehend in our worldviews its long-term repercussions.
Yeah, so far so good. I can't argue with any of those points. Bitcoin, it's a network. Every 10 minutes, the blockchain and the blocks move when they make transactions. Every 10 minutes, nothing can stop that, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't understand what that means, I want you to really focus and learn how the Bitcoin blockchain works, man. It's when you see this, it looks like an alien came down and made this technology. I'm not joking. This is why I get so excited about it.
All right, well, let's focus then on the long term, provided we consider about a decade out to the long term. Because you told Robert Kiyosaki about a month ago that in 10 years' time, in 2031, you see Bitcoin at $12.5 million, but with an inflation-adjusted value of around $1 million, meaning the current purchasing power of $1 million per Bitcoin. Do you maintain that outlook?
I do maintain that outlook. And this is based on percentage expansion rates of money supplies historically. So the United States expanded into over 30% last year. And it's easy to forget, and mankind has forgotten this repeatedly throughout history. It usually takes a few generations each time, that the expansion of the money supply is governed by a law. And it's called the law of accelerating issuance and depreciation. So the more money you print, the more money you ultimately later have to print just to keep the system going. So I do expect the expansion of USM2 to double again, probably in the next 4 years. And then I expect it to double again from there. So we'll be north of 100% USM2 expansion annually by the end of the decade. At the same time, because money has this centripetal network effect, we tend towards one. That's what gold was. That's what the US dollar is. I do expect a lot of the weaker international currencies to collapse into the dollar during this transition. So I would say that global M2 today is about $100 trillion. US M2 is about 20 trillion. So it's roughly 20% of that. I would expect US M2 to expand to be about 40% of global M2 by the end of the decade. But global M2 itself will have expanded from 100 trillion due to this law of accelerating issuance and depreciation to about 1.25 quadrillion, which is $1,250 trillion. And in that time as well, I expect Bitcoin as essentially the ultimate irrepressible non-counterparty insurance policy against central banks to appreciate in tandem. So I think its purchasing power will increase to $1 million in 2021 purchasing power. But by that time, due to the expansion in the money supply from 100 trillion US M2 to 1,250 trillion M2, Bitcoin will actually be nominally valued at $12.5 million US by the end of the decade. Further, at that point, currencies tend to start hyperinflating. So I actually think fiat currency globally will be collapsed by the mid 2030s.
Yeah, when it comes to Bitcoin price predictions, I hear all different kind of numbers. That was very interesting. I believe the system will collapse too in about 10 years, something like that. The dollar. But who knows? I've said 5 to 7, 7 to 10. Who knows what's going to happen, right? But when it comes to Bitcoin, we're talking about a whole new paradigm shift, right? We can't compare dollars and silver and gold to a digital scarce money that they're not making any more of, that has a ledger and so many different things built on top of it. It's absolutely crazy. But anyways, that's for another video. So let's get on into this interview with the great Lynette Zang, one of my favorite gold bugs and one of my favorite Bitcoin bugs in Robert Breedlove. This should be interesting.
Hey everybody, welcome to the What is Money Show. I am thrilled to have you here joining me on my mission to help shine light on the corruption of money. Now, if this is your first time listening to the What is Money Show, I strongly recommend that you go back to episodes 1 through 9 first, which lays a lot of the groundwork for many of the concepts that we explore on the show. These first 9 episodes are my series with Michael Saylor, and thousands of people have told me that this is the best podcast series they've ever heard, hands down, and that it was instrumental to their understanding of money and Bitcoin. So if you're looking to start a deep dive into the nature of money, I don't think there's any place better that you can start other than episode 1 of this show.
Now let me stop right there. Go to What is Money on YouTube. First of all, subscribe to that channel. And it's not just about Bitcoin. It is about the question he asked everybody is, what is money? But if you go back, I think that interview was late 2020, early 21. I'm not sure, but it was a 9-part sit down with Michael Saylor. And that's how I got introduced to Michael Saylor. And let me tell you something. He breaks down the history of money and everything else, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. So before you go on to this video, go over there, click on that, subscribe to it, and then watch that at your leisure.
Lynette Zang, welcome to the What is Money Show.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here, Robert. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy to have you. I think we're going to jump into some very juicy topics in this conversation. And just by way of a quick introduction, you are a very well-known financial analyst. You are currently the chief market analyst at ITM Trading and a prominent figure in the gold and precious metals community. You have an extensive experience in finance. You've worked in many different positions over a 5-decade career, and you've developed a deep understanding of financial markets, currencies, and global economics, which is why I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about all of those things. I have a question about gold-backed digital currency. I guess you could say gold-backed currency in general, but we'll stick with digital. Doesn't this still, even if they do successfully move to gold-backed digital currency, this still necessitates trust in the monetary authority or the government or the central bank, right, to maintain the peg? If they say the gold is redeemable for, whatever, 1 Zimbabwean dollar for 1 ounce of gold, at any time they can suspend that redeemability. So aren't we still kind of in a trap, even if they do successfully move to a gold standard, that they can just revoke it at any time?
100%. That's why you hear me say all the time, if you don't hold it, you don't own it, regardless of what your perception is. Because look, and I know you have these too, all these currencies that were once used for barterability that the government said, nope, no longer. You can't use it any longer.
Yeah.
So yes, to your point, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, as we say in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coin. And I guess in gold, it's, not your gold, not your gold. If you're not holding the physical specie, then you don't have it.
If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Exactly. I live by that. You gotta get that right, Robert. I know you don't I mean, he actually does do a little bit of gold, but and not your keys, not your coins. You know what I mean? I live by that. Again, guys, this channel is all about freedom, and we get freedom through a whole bunch of different things. Obviously, going by the Constitution of the United States of America, being a sovereign individual, but keeping hard money outside of the banking system. You know what I mean? So I went through this video just now, and I edited some stuff out. I edited the beginning and stuff like that, so I'm skipping around to the meaty parts, I guess. But yeah, this is very, very interesting.
Speaking of gold, you've been tweeting a lot lately, #GotGold ? I'm curious on your views of gold versus Bitcoin. Like, what makes gold better than Bitcoin? They're very comparable in a lot of ways in terms of that you can own something with no counterparty risk. There's Bitcoin has a fixed supply, gold has a scarce supply. So like, how do you weigh gold versus Bitcoin, and why are you so focused on gold rather than Bitcoin?
Number one, it's 6,000 years of history. And when something has happened the same way 100% of the time, over 4,800 times or more than that, actually, then I know that there is historic precedence for its value. And the second big piece, and this is really where I have a challenge with Bitcoin or CBDCs or anything like that, is its utility. Because in gold and in silver, this is true for both of these physical metals, they are used across the entire spectrum and in every single sector of the global economy. So it has the broadest utility, right? And if something is used that extensively, what that's really telling you is that it has the broadest base of buyer.
Mm-hmm.
That's why gold has never, ever, for 6,000 years, it's never gone to zero, because there are always buyers. And I look at intangible assets of any kind, they only have utility in one place. I think it's fabulous that you can hold a lot of wealth. And this is something, in my mind, what they share is that you can hold a lot of wealth in a small package, and it's movable wealth, which is critically important. I mean, real estate is wealth, but you can't put it on your back and walk away with it.
That's right.
You can certainly do that with gold. I mean, you just get a more and more and more rare coin or piece of jewelry or what have you, and it's easy to move a lot of wealth. And you can put Bitcoin on a thumb drive and put it in your pocket. And so that to me is, that's the plus in Bitcoin, is that you can move a lot of wealth.
I don't know if you guys watched my video when I said why I don't have any gold. I believe gold and silver are different things, entities, because silver has so much utility and stuff more than gold. And I know what she was saying, because I don't disagree with her when she's saying you can hold a lot more wealth in gold than you can silver. The problem is you can only take a certain amount on a plane or a boat or something like that. Like if you're getting checked by people or, things like that. I have to correct Lynette too. She said Bitcoin is held on a jump drive. Okay. This is a Trezor Model T. And this is a Ledger Nano X, okay? Your Bitcoin is not held on those, okay? Your Bitcoin is on the blockchain. What these devices do is they come up with a password or a key phrase of 12 to 24 words that are not involved with the companies, and is generated right there in the spot off the internet. That's why it's a cold storage, it's off the internet. So you just put the words in that give that long, passcode or whatever, and that gives you access in and out of the blockchain to get to your Bitcoin, right? You don't need these actually to use your Bitcoin. You can lose these and get some more. Everything she's saying is true. She's absolutely right. I can't, deny that. 6,000 years and everything else. But the problem is Lynette doesn't know about Bitcoin, and she's not wrong for it. At her age, she's 68, about to be 69, and a lot of people are like this. This is why I make these videos. Bitcoin is a whole different animal. And as we're going to see, hopefully, Robert's going to school her on that, or, explain to her what Bitcoin is.
However, what I have a challenge seeing is its utility. Other than that, I mean, it's not a good tool of barter because the price is so volatile, and it hasn't been proven. It came out in 2009, and that was in January 2009, and then quantitative easing came out in March of 2009. And can you imagine how much more would have gone into physical gold if Bitcoin wasn't around?
Yeah, Lynette. The reason why more money didn't go into gold is because people found Bitcoin and they found the digital version of gold, right? I mean, you just said it yourself. And I'm not arguing with Lynette. I love Lynette Zang. She's right from her perspective, but because she doesn't really know and understand about Bitcoin. She knows it, she reads it, she knows a little bit, but she doesn't know the network and stuff like that. You can tell already. Like when you know something and you like studying it for a couple of years, and then people say certain things, you just know they're kind of like they didn't deep dive into it like you did. You know what I'm saying? Bitcoin is pretty much my life now. Bitcoin and silver and freedom and Constitution and stuff like that. But yeah, she said it herself, Lynette. You said it yourself, ma'am. The reason why gold would have been higher in 2009 is because a lot of people put money into Bitcoin. So is that a zinger or is that a zanger? Gotcha, Lynette.
Yeah, well, definitely more purchasing power would have flowed into gold because there would have been no better alternative. And I actually agree with you on gold's established history. That I think it's a 5,000 plus year old monetary metal. Not likely that it's going anywhere quickly. However, I do think there are, swords have been around for a really long time too. And then when we invented gunpowder, all of a sudden swords were much less useful. So I do think I'm a believer in technological innovation too, radically changing things. And the point on Bitcoin not having industrial demand, I actually view that as a positive, because it's, if gold's market cap is 12 or 14 trillion perhaps, roughly 80% of that is demand for gold as a store of value or a monetary asset, let's say, and the other 20% of gold's market cap is demand for it as an industrial metal in dentistry or electronics or all these other things that gold is used in. Yeah. So when I look at Bitcoin, I see an asset that 100% of its market capitalization is monetary premium. So it's like the invention of a pure money in a way. And although they're obviously competitive because monetary technologies are always competitive, I think Bitcoin and gold exist alongside for quite some time. Because again, I don't think gold's going anywhere for a really long time. But when I look at the actual fundamental properties of money itself, I think Bitcoin is superior. So that's why I advocate for Bitcoin over gold. Not that I'm against physical gold. I just prefer Bitcoin.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the monetary properties and when, the reason why money was invented was so that society could specialize. You could have a farmer, you could have a banker, you could have a baker, etc.
Division of labor.
Division of labor, exactly. And one person can't do it. Also makes a whole lot of sense. So when they were establishing what money is, and especially to sell it to the public, it had 4 key functions. And that's part of what I'm looking at. So it's a tool of measure. It's a tool of barter. It's a short-term tool of value to make sure that you are fairly paid for your labor. And it's a long-term store of value so that no matter when you use it, you are still being paid fairly for your labor.
Mm-hmm.
And its valuation, at least initially, was labor for labor.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a more fair system. Because of the evolution of money in terms, you brought up the IMF, so that's made up of all the treasury secretaries and all the central bank chiefs, almost all of them in the world, right? And you're looking at the advent of fiat money. They've already removed, just by creating inflation, which is baked into the fiat money system so that it's by design, it loses value over time. Mm-hmm. It is not a long-term store of value. And what that did was it forced people to take more risk to keep pace with the inflation.
That's right.
What they're talking about when we're going into the CBDCs is removing that short-term store of value, because once we do that, then they have their finger on the button of monetary policy, which they can modify, and they've talked about this 24/7, and there are no limitations on how low they can push interest rates, which erodes your principal. I mean, it is that simple.
Right.
If you're paying that money. So now you're getting your paycheck going directly into the bank account that is immediately charging you negative rates. Mm-hmm. So the only function of money going forward, if they have their way, is as a short-term tool of measure. Okay, we're going to pay you this, and a tool of barter. So gold solves those other 2 issues. I'm not sure, and there is not enough history that Bitcoin can solve for those other 2 issues, a short-term store of value and a long-term store of value.
Lynette, I have to disagree with you, ma'am. Bitcoin has definitely done well since January 3rd, 2009. We can't say long-term. It depends on how you define long-term. But if you do just the 14 and almost half years, or 14 and 3/4, or 14 and a half years or whatever that Bitcoin has been here, let's just say that's the short time. Well, it's gone from zero to almost $30,000. Things that have gone down in purchasing price in compared to Bitcoin, things are costing less now. It costs you less Bitcoins to buy a house and a car and the things you need and stuff like that.
Bitcoin is repricing that entire system, but from the outside in. In Bitcoin, you could simplify this really easily. Prices fall to the marginal cost of production, no matter what. But the only thing that could measure that phenomenon is something that was outside the system of debt. What's happening in Bitcoin is why 5 years ago it would have cost 100 Bitcoin to buy a house, and now it costs 10 Bitcoin to buy a house. And that'll continue to fall as all prices relative to Bitcoin will fall forever. But most people will measure those prices through whatever currency is being manipulated, and they will continue to be confused about what's happening.
So as a short-term store of value, I think it's great. It's going to be volatile, of course, because it's brand new. And it's like a little small boat out in the ocean with all this liquidity and money out here. But as Bitcoin grows, the volatility will go down. As far as long-term is concerned, there's only 21 million coins, and there's an unlimited supply of cash, and there's a lot more silver and gold in the world that can be found and dug out and stuff like that. It's very scarce in compared to dollars, silver and gold, but Bitcoin is 100 completely finite with the 21 million. There will be no more than that.
Yeah, definitely the biggest drawback of Bitcoin is lack of established history, which is where gold is strongest. What would cause you to change your mind? I guess what data would need to come in for you to consider Bitcoin proven or established or what have you? How do you wrestle with that? Let's say the market proving of Bitcoin.
More utility.
More utility. It's made to be money. It's not made like, silver is for. I love the utility of silver, but Bitcoin is made for a store of value, which is doing great, and also a medium of exchange. And so far, so good. So I wonder what she means by utility.
That's really the biggest hiccup that I have with it. I can see the direction that we're going in. And I know that the Bank for International Settlements has carved out a very small place for private digital currencies like Bitcoin in their money flower. There's a much bigger area for commodity money, gold and silver, also in that money area. And, and the other thing, when you look at that flower, there's just this little piece that is not underneath central bank control. So for me, it's utility, because what I'm seeing as I'm watching it, and I've been watching Bitcoin since it was $7 a coin, right? So I've been watching it for a long time.
Okay, Lynette, you've been watching it for a long time. That's fine. A lot of people have been watching it, but have you studied it? That's the thing. If you study the network, not just the number next to the name on the stock market chart, like many of us did before that. I'm actually talking about going in, reading the white paper, looking at the blockchain, looking at the network, looking at all the entities on top of it, the Lightning Network and everything else. That's the difference.
And what I see Wall Street adopting it, way more than Main Street adopting it. And I see it being turned into a trading vehicle. Because everything has been turned into a trading vehicle. So I can't tell you what the true value is of Bitcoin, but I can of gold. And not what Wall Street wants everybody to believe, but its true fundamental value based upon history and the level of money that the governments and the central banks are creating, which at this point is created purely from debt. So, and the new currency, I mean, it's been a bit of a struggle to find out what's going to justify it. I've heard debt, which means they got to wipe out all the debt right now. And the other thing that I've heard is based on transactions. So money will be created into the system based on transactions. So the good of Bitcoin, presuming that, and I'm going to just bow to you because I know that you look at it at a different level than I do, is that it is finite. Right. But what could persuade me is to see more utility. That's what could persuade me.
Could you maybe just expand upon that a bit? Because I'm not sure exactly what you mean by utility. If we're talking about industrial use of Bitcoin, I'm not sure that that's even possible. So I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that.
Correct. What are the different ways and uses of it because right now it's movable wealth
Mhm.
and it's trading wealth,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it goes up to 60,000, it's back down to 18,000, it's up to 28,000, right? This is not right. But for gold, there's a lot of industrial uses. It's in space, it's in electronics, it's in dental, it's in money, it's in jewelry, it's in food. It's in every single area. So I don't know that Bitcoin has the ability to do that because it's not real, right? It's intangible. And that's really the challenge. And in my personal strategy, having studied currency life cycles, and I mean, there's plenty out there to study, you see these repeatable patterns. And everybody always says this time is different, but at the end of the day, it really never is.
Guys, I could really break that down. When she says Bitcoin doesn't have any utility, Bitcoin has a lot of utility. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a video called "What are Bitcoin's utilities?" or Bitcoin's utilities or something like that, because a lot of people wonder that, like, oh, it's just nothing. It's just, there's digital stuff in space. It has a lot of utilities. Okay, I buy nothing but utility stuff, as you can see. And let me explain something to you real quick, okay? Let me do a little commercial. The reason why I have this stuff out here, I don't do this to brag. I do this for a couple reasons. Number one is I put my money where my mouth is, right? I show this stuff because obviously most of you guys are silver stackers and you like looking at silver, right? When I have to look at the analytics of my channel, when I'm walking around or talking or not showing silver, I don't get as many views. But when people see this stuff, this is what they want to see. That's number one. Number two, I do this because I have Bitcoin, but it's almost like an oxymoron. I'm talking about this Bitcoin stuff like it's incredible, but you're looking at all this silver. So obviously, I love silver. I mean, that's obvious, right? So I don't do it to brag and say, oh, look how much I got and all that. I'm doing it because I like stuff with utilities. This is why I don't have gold, because even though gold does have some utility, it does. To me, I've heard between 80 and 90% it's money, and the rest of it, the 10 or 20% is utility. Silver and platinum is much more of a utility metal. And Bitcoin in the digital space is definitely a digital money with a lot of utility. And I'll make a specific video about that.
Yeah, that's a great book by that title, right? This time is different. Okay, if just hypothetically, if Bitcoin were to achieve par market cap as gold, let's say they're equal, they're both 10 or 12 trillion dollars, and the volatility was roughly equal, would that be something that would change your mind at that point?
The market cap would not, because I know how severely undervalued gold is, because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And once you really grasp the concept that this currency is losing all value, just like over 4,800 currencies have, right?
Right.
Then you start to make different choices, right? So, for me, I just feel a lot more comfortable with something that's tried and true. It doesn't mean that I never will buy Bitcoin or I never will, but the market cap has nothing to do with it because it's all manufactured. It's not real. I love being my age. Honestly, I'm going to be 69 this year. And I love being my age because of what I have personally experienced, right? I was there in 1971 when we transitioned from a quasi-gold-backed currency to a pure debt-based currency. I was like 16, 17 years old. So I was old enough to get that feeling and see what was happening around me. Did I really understand it? No, I did not really understand it. Yeah. However, I know what it smells like, looks like, tastes like, right? So there are advantages. I was there as a stockbroker on Black Monday in 87. So I know what that feels like, smells like, looks like, tastes like. And there's a lot of advantage to age.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I got to agree with her on that. There's definitely some advantages having age. The problem is sometimes there's a disadvantage because the younger people see the world a little bit different. I'm going to give you an example. My god kids that I know, they're all on that Chat GPT BS, right? And I just don't get it. You know what I mean? I guess I feel like my silver stacker is talking about Bitcoin. But I recently downloaded it to my phone. Haven't played around with it yet, but these kids are just playing with it, and a lot of adults are playing on it too. And it's just like, man, I don't even want to think about the AI. And I heard ChatGPT is really, really woke, but I just don't even want to think about AI and stuff like that. But regardless, it's coming. You know what I mean? Because my whole life, my whole 40 something plus years, almost 50 years, I didn't have AI. You know what I mean? But now it's coming. These kids know it and they're talking about it and stuff. And what Lynette, being her age, almost 69 years old, she's seen a lot. She's a lot older than me, and she's seen a lot. The problem is with that, and it's not her fault or a bad thing, is she's just coming from a paradigm that doesn't know anything about the digital renaissance of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a complete, and I know you saw the other video when they were talking about the horses versus the trains, right? When the people that had the horses, and again, when people say, oh, gold's been around thousands of years, so has horses, ladies and gentlemen. And now look how much horses are not being used. Horses are cool. They were great before the trains and the automobiles came. You know what I mean? And then the planes came and stuff like that. That's how technology works, whether we like it or not. Technology doesn't care about our feelings. And so when the people had the horses, and they were feeding the horses and raising them, and their family had that horse. When that locomotive came in, they didn't understand that using energy instead of horsepower or animals' power to move something, it doesn't even sound right to them. But it's a complete different paradigm from the people that had the horses to the people that had the foresight to make the locomotives. And that's how I feel about gold being the horse in this analogy and Bitcoin being the train. I know what I know, and I know what I've seen. You know what I'm saying? And I'm betting a lot on it. I really am.
We are going through a global monetary reset, I guess would be kind of 100%. The punchline to what we've talked about so far. You've also used this term, the surveillance era. Is that related to this reset? Is this central banks are trying to get people into central bank digital currencies for purposes of surveilling and perhaps applying social credit score systems
Control.
to them? Is that what's going on here?
100%. 100%. And that makes having something completely out of the system that much more critical. And I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced that Bitcoin is out of the system when I see Wall Street adopting it. So much. So yes, full surveillance. If they don't, look what happened in Canada, for goodness sakes, right? The trucker strike, which was perfectly legal and it was not violent, but the government didn't like it, and boom, they shut down all your bank accounts, all your insurance accounts, all your digital accounts. They shut down everything. And not just for the truckers, but for anybody that supported the truckers. Oh, here, let me give you $5. Okay, boom, your account. That just raised alarm bells like crazy. And I've been talking about it for a while because we've been watching this evolve. So yes, they can look at how much you have in there. They can dictate how you spend it, where you spend it, how much of a life it has, which is typical in these transitions. They'll go, okay, well, if you don't use this by June 31st, then it has no more value, right? So, and they can pull taxes from you. They can do lifetime taxes. All right, you had a bad year, but hey, you have a good year. Okay, we're just going to pull that out. And look at Ford, right? Now, the IMF did a report, and I think it was 2015, but don't hold me to it. And it's one of my favorite reports that they've ever done, which is called Breaking Below the Lower Zero Bound. So how they can take the whole world negative, right? Negative rates, they want us to think that negative rates are a choice. But why in the world would you bust your butt to earn this money and loan it to somebody other than your children, knowing you're not going to get back what you're loaning? Right? That is completely illogical. Completely illogical. But they can force it, right? So they can force you to spend. They can dictate where you're going to spend it. And Ford recently came out and got the patent, and the IMF had talked about this, got a patent on the self-driving cars. So if you do not, all these smart houses, the smart cars, and all of this smart stuff, well, that has the smart contracts on there. And if you miss a payment, then they can lock you out of the car and drive the car away. They can lock you out of your house, and what are you going to do?
Wow.
So yeah, you have to do things that can ensure that you are as independent and self-sufficient as possible. Because if you are not, you have to do what they say.
Preach, Lynette. My God, I love that woman. My God, I agree with her 100%. Of course, except for the Bitcoin thing. Man, oh my gosh. This is why I make these videos, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because it's a war we're in against these evil people with the like she said, the smart cars and what they're going to do with our money, lifetime taxes with the CBDCs, turning your money off. And it's funny she brought up the Canadian thing because people were sending peer-to-peer Bitcoin. Now if you have your Bitcoin in an exchange, they can stop it. But if you have your Bitcoin on the blockchain and you just put a little bit on your cold wallet on your phone, like a Moon wallet or something like that, and you digitally send it peer-to-peer, they can't stop that. They can't stop it. It's a peer-to-peer money. So we all know what's going on and we all want the same thing. This is why I'm trying to bring us together. You know what I mean? The Bitcoin stackers and the precious metal stackers. Lynette said it best. Robert knows she's right. The problem is he's a Bitcoin maximalist. He wanted to say something. He wanted to jump in so bad when she was talking because were just screaming at the top of our lungs. I want the gold and silver experts out here that know about precious metals like the back of their hand because they know about the economy and what's going on with the financial market. I want them to sit down and learn how Bitcoin works. And then everybody should have Bitcoin because it's only a finite amount. It soon, and I'm not saying this to scare anybody, there will be a time that it's going to be almost impossible to get or it's going to be so expensive to get. You're like, wow, I'm only going to get this amount for this amount of money. You know what I mean? But just get it now. Get your Bitcoin insurance now and get off zero.
It's absolutely 100% certain that the fiat Ponzi will fail. It's just a matter of when. I like to think of Bitcoin as an insurance policy on the fiat Ponzi. And it's like owning fire insurance on your house. You don't ever want your house to burn down, but let's say you see on the other side of a valley a forest fire. Well, if the forest fire is approaching your house, you know that you're in trouble. You'd certainly want to own insurance. And you don't trade that insurance. You keep that insurance. And I like to think of Bitcoin as the same thing. It's insurance on the fiat Ponzi. It's extremely cheap, and yet lots of people are inclined to buy and sell it. And I'm like, you don't sell your fire insurance on your house, much like you don't sell Bitcoin as your insurance policy on the fiat Ponzi.
I know Robert Breedlove was screaming that in his head, and so am I. This is why I make these videos, guys.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit scary, the direction we're going. Okay, the commercial banking sector in the U.S. seems like it's undergoing a controlled demolition of sorts. So
that's what they're doing.
Interest rates are being hiked, so that's drawing depositors out of local banks into treasuries. They're also
money markets too.
Yeah, money markets. The guarantee on large banks seems to be rather explicit from the central bank, right? If you're with JPM or BOA or Wells Fargo, one of these big banks, your deposits are insured and guaranteed explicitly by the, let's say the U.S. government, but the Fed really. Yet with other smaller banking branches, those guarantees have not been made as explicit. So there's like additional risk, say not banking with the big people. Is this part of that transition into CBDCs? Are they trying to corral people out of the regional, say commercial banking sector into large banks?
Well, the consolidation and the loss of mom and pop, which is really the backbone of this country. So I would say mom and pop stores. I would also say the regional banks, right? That transition and that consolidation in both of those sectors has really started back in like 2000. And so, yes, because part of what they've been reimagining is the role of these commercial banks. And they are going to, and understand, when did FDIC, when was that born? Oh yeah, 1933. When all confidence in the banking system was lost.
Right.
And what did they do? They came out with Glass-Steagall and the FDIC. And Glass-Steagall separated deposit-taking banks from risk-taking banks. Have you heard one person talk about going back to eliminating deposit-taking banks and risk-taking banks, separating them? I haven't heard one entity talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they eliminated Glass-Steagall in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
They brought out the speculative derivatives also in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
We had long-term capital management, which was the first derivative implosion that almost took down the global system. But the banks and the central banks went in and shored that up so people don't even realize it.
Taxpayer-funded bailout.
Always. And with the FDIC and with what's happening now, and they're coming out and saying, oh, but the taxpayers aren't going to pay for any of this. No, or this is not a bailout. Mm-hmm. That is garbage, because even in the banks that they chose to make whole, every single one that's gone under has been made, all the depositors have been made whole, mm-hmm. right? And we're talking about the smaller regional banks, and the most current one, First Republic, taken over by the largest bank, the bank that gets 10% of every deposit that's made to all banks. 10% of it goes to JP Morgan, the largest bank. They made an exception so they could get even larger. So yes, to your point, what we've been experiencing is a consolidation, on a much, certainly in banking, but on a much bigger scale of that. And I'm also old enough to remember when if you were unhappy with a product or a service, you could go to the decision maker and say, I'm unhappy. And they wanted to keep you as a customer. So they did what they needed to do to make you happy again in most cases. Sometimes you can't, but in most cases, right? Today, I mean, what service is there? What you do if you're unhappy with something and you make a phone call, you get this person whose job is to block you and keep you right there and to keep you away from the decision makers. And I mean, the garbage, I don't need to get into it. People know what I'm talking about, though. You buy something, even at a premium dollar, and it's garbage. It breaks down like almost immediately after you get it. And you go to complain about it, and it never really gets made right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a full surveillance economy, the direction that we're going in is definitely a consolidation of power into fewer and fewer and fewer hands. And also, though, it is a consolidation of the risk into fewer and fewer and fewer hands. And what we can't see because it is so opaque is truthfully what's happening in those derivative markets. All we see is the tip of the iceberg. But there has to be, since interest rate derivatives are about 80% of all of the derivative bets that have been written, the speculative derivative bets. And you see what's happening with the problem with, it's not just the regional banks, it's all the banks, including the central bank, that has massive losses on their books from raising rates, interest rates, principal value, right? So as they've been raising their rates, the market principal value of those bonds go down. And the longer the term, the greater that fluctuation. So they were hiding the breakdown of the debt markets when they were lowering the rates because it made the bonds market value more, right? But now the opposite is happening. So yeah, right now we are seeing a complete breakdown of the financial system, but we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. It is what it is. And I've been saying since the first of the year that there was going to be some crisis that happened before June. And, somebody asked me about that the other day. So, well, don't you think the banking breakdown is kind of a crisis? Right? Right? And I went back and I looked at 2008 and I said, okay, so how did that banking crisis start as far as the smaller banks that started to implode? And really pretty similar to what we're seeing right now, like 3, 4, 5, every month it kind of evolved until obviously in September of 2008, then it became visible to the public.
Preach, Lynette. My God, I love when that woman goes off like that. And she's absolutely right. If you go back and look in 2008, a couple of banks here, a couple of banks there, then boom, all of a sudden, at the end of 2008, it was done. The difference is, because she said it at the end, she said it went public and everybody knew. Everybody knows now. You know what I mean? Because social media wasn't a thing back then. Social media didn't start until literally around 2009, 10, something like that with Facebook and all that. I know we had YouTube in 2005, but you know what I'm saying? Everybody just constantly connected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every second, every minute of the day. But now people are waking up. And this is why we're doing this, guys. We got to tell people about taking our freedoms and the sound money and the banks closing and the people taking the money out the banks. And that's why the banks are closing, because people are taking the money out. You know what I mean? They're the cash out, because this is money right here. We know this is money. Very interesting.
Yeah, so we could be in the early stages of another banking crisis.
I'm 100% certain.
Yeah.
I'm 100% certain we are.
Okay, we're getting close to time here. I want to ask you just a couple more things. FedNow, scheduled to go live in July 2023. What is this? How is it related to the rollout of a U.S. CBDC or a Federal Reserve CBDC? And do you have a timeline on that? Like, when should we expect to see CBDCs in the West?
Well, the FedNow, they did this huge announcement, I believe it was 2019, where every single person, whether you realize it or not, you have a FedNow account. Even if you live super, super remote, and all you have there is a post office, you got a FedNow account. What they talked about and they looked at during the recent crisis that we were going through with the disease that we won't talk about, okay, was how much easier it would be if everybody just had an account and they could just pump new money into that account.
Right.
So now it's all in place. It was in place before 2020, but it's all in place. It's going live in July. And in this next big crisis, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to put a whole bunch of CBDCs into these accounts. Now, presumably they're still studying it, but they've been testing it. So And if you look on a global basis, it has not been as easily adopted as governments would want. So I actually have hope that it's rejected, but you got to have some other money to work with. Or how are you going to reject it if all you're sitting on is this garbage, right? The fiat garbage. You're not going to have a choice. So during this is what I think is going to happen. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But there will be a huge crisis, and people will be freaked out and panicked, right? And then they will inject a whole bunch of money into these FedNow accounts and say, hey, don't worry. If you lost your job or what have you, here's a whole bunch of money. But what their hope is then people will continue to fund it. And I don't know, that hasn't gone so well for like Nigerians, South Americans. I mean, a number of places that have been forced into it. The adoption hasn't been, but that's what I see.
Right.
And look at how convenient it is. But the easier it is to create money, the more they create and the less value the money that's out there already has.
That little money gun has a remarkable amount of currency in it. Very impressive.
It does, but it does run out. Yes, and the central banks, don't they have a remarkable amount empty? And that's what's going to happen in the central banks.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, so much to look forward to. Hopefully people are taking this conversation as something useful in their preparations for what is to come, because this stuff is no joke, right? Like when the money doesn't work, well, it disrupts basically everything in society. So Lynette, thank you so much for spending time with me. I appreciate your unique perspectives on all of this.
Great talk. And I agree with her. I didn't know about the FedNow. Everybody already has an account. I didn't know that. But there is going to be a crisis, I believe, a black swan event, and I think it's going to be a manufactured crisis, just like the scamdemic. People get mad when I say the scamdemic. That's what it was, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying there wasn't that sickness and people didn't get sick, but it is what it is, okay? I absolutely love that discussion. You got a titan and a legend in the gold space with Lynette Zang, and you got an up-and-coming young man and Robert Breedlove in the Bitcoin. He's a superstar in the Bitcoin space. Guys, it's not all about Bitcoin and silver and gold and precious metals and digital, currencies and stuff like that. It's about waking these people up, and I use these videos because I'm sure a lot of you guys may have not seen it and may not have known about certain things, about certain situations with Bitcoin or CBDCs or the FedNow or whatever. And that's why I try to bring it to your attention. And that's why I love when you guys send me videos in my emails and send me videos or links in my comments and stuff like that. We have to sit down with these people, our family, our friends, coworkers, whatever, and we have to wake them up. And once they realize that they've been lied to, okay, and they're in a Ponzi scheme, and it's not what they thought it was, and we're literally in a matrix. Once you wake them up to that, then you start moving them into a little bit of silver and a little bit of supplies, and maybe, getting a couple of bucks of Bitcoin and taking it off the cold storage and taking some silver and putting it in the safe and not having things on paper, and maybe taking some things out of the stock market and, taking some of that fiat currency and taking it out of the banks, and just being ready and prepared, because the more people you have prepared in your life, that's your tribe. Those are the people that you're gonna do battle with. And every single person we convert into an informed American and not a zombie is going to help us, because our friends now that are loved ones and friends, and we have all this and they don't, and now they're going to come to us, they're going to be our enemies. I hate to say that, because even though you tried to wake them up and you tried to show them silver and gold or Bitcoin or what's going on in the markets and stuff like that, if they don't have anything prepared, who do you think they're going to go to? Oh, I'm going to go to that crazy guy, Jerry or Jimmy or Shane or whoever, you know what I mean, or Anthony, or I'm going to go to him. But it's like, well, I told you this 5 years ago. I told you this 3 years ago, 10 years ago. It's scary, ladies and gentlemen, what's going to happen. But it's almost like, a zombie apocalypse is coming, and you have the remedy just to give them a shot of, hey, this will help you not be a zombie. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. This is why I make these videos. And again, guys, I really need your help. I'm not going to be working. I'm just going to be doing these videos and passing on the word. So I've gotten a couple of donations from you guys. I really appreciate that. I know you guys see all this silver and think I got all this money. This is part of my savings. Money that's coming in is going to be basically almost slowed down or stopped, because I'm going to be doing this stuff full time. So whatever you can do to put in the tip jar, like, again, I do Zelle, Cashapp, Venmo, and Bitcoin. 50 cents here, a dollar there, it all helps. You don't got to give me a bunch of money. And if you can't afford it, it's okay. Make videos, talk to people, share this video, share other things. But I really would appreciate the help. And it's not about the money, it's about the message. My God, man, we're in a position where there's nothing we can do about this as far as like what's going on. We can't stop it. All we can do is contain it and be informed and make sure our loved ones and our family members are also informed. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. What did you guys think about the video? Did you learn something today? I would love for Lynette Zang to go to the Bitcoin conference next weekend in Miami. That would be great if she did that. So, my gosh, that would be great. And then get some of these Bitcoiners, get them some precious metals because, again, guys, we're all on the same team. All right? So let me know what you guys think. I love this video. I love everything that's going on. What do you think about the video, the thoughts, talking to other people? Let me know, guys, all right? Please, guys, in the comment section below. Do me a favor, guys. If you like this video, hit the like button. Only if you like it. If you guys like my channel and my videos, go ahead and share it. Guys, am I sharing stuff with you? I'm sharing my passion, my love, this great country, this great nation. We got to keep going, guys. We got to keep going and never stop, man. I'm never going to stop. Never. And I know you guys won't either. So since I'm sharing all this stuff with you, the least you can do is share my videos. Because you already know, sharing is caring. You guys also know I love you very much. You guys are my boys. Guys, let's get it, all right? Let's get this information. Get off zero if you're a precious metal stacker and get you some Bitcoin and put it on the cold storage and get it off the exchange. Get your cash as much as you can outside the banking system. Bitcoiners, get some precious metals. We need it all. Get your supplies, get your pew-pews, get your water, get your community, get your people together. Let's wake these people up, all right? God bless you and your family. Thank you so much for watching. God bless this country, man. God bless this country. I love each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and love, guys.